Hi guys, loads of you have been asking for a video on the monk weapon proficiency trees, so I figured I'd finally do it. So what we're going to do in this video is we're going to look at each weapon tree individually for most of the end game monk weapons. So, we're obviously going to look at like the Sanguine Claws, Soulkamas. We're also going to look at like the level 250 type weapons as well in the mid game. And we're going to just go through every single tree and we're going to say what is basically like the default choice to go for the tree if you don't know any better, and what are some of the situational choices that you could consider in the trees as well. And yeah, so let's just get into it. I'll put in timestamps in the video, so if you're particularly interested in a particular weapon, you can just jump straight to the timestamp. So first of all, let's look straight at the Sanguine Claws. Okay, first two choices, very obvious. You just go for +1 fist fighting, plus critical extra damage. And also the default choice is critical extra damage. In the third choice, that you have the option here, if you're doing bossing, you can consider getting the damage against bosses. That is better. If you proper doing bosses, then 3% damage against bosses is obviously better than 8% critical extra damage. But that is situational, obviously. In here, you should go for the base damage for sweep and takedown. It scales very, very well. Now, obviously, at a certain level, when the level damage overtakes like base damages, critical extra damage will be better. But we ran the numbers and this is like level 3000 or 4000 or something. So it's basically for for very, very long time irrelevant. So yeah, just get the base damage for sweep and takedown in here. In this proficiency 5, the two options that are close is the +1 attack and the fist fighting as extra damage for your spells. So the 10% of your fist fighting as extra damage for your spells, the one that's in green, is basically the default one for when you're hunting. That one works out to be better when just hunting. However, the +1 attack is better for bossing or single target stuff as well. It does more damage basically for bossing, and it also does a little bit more leech. So there's not a big difference. They're pretty close. In the Soulkamas tree, you'll see that it's switched around because it's 7.5% instead of 10%, and that actually is then in favor of +1 attack. But we'll get to that. So yeah, if you're hunting, go for this one. If you're bossing, go for this one. Then we have this proficiency 6, which is 10% critical extra damage or 100% of your magic level as extra healing for your spells. And personally, I would put green on this one. I think the magic level as extra healing is actually the more default choice. It's very, very good. This works on every healing spell. So like your Exura Gran, your Spirit Mend, just gets plus 100% of your magic level, which is like 60 every turn, 60 healing. And this also works on your virtue healing. So every time you cast a spell, you get your virtue healing. This is plus 60, plus 60, plus 60, 30 times a minute, right? Every time you cast a spell. So this is like 5,000 healing a minute from this alone, which is very good. It's amazing for like zero supply hunts and amazing for comfort. I would honestly recommend this one. However, if you're hunting something that is super easy and you really don't need that healing, then obviously the critical extra damage will be better, which is why both of those are situational. So bottom line, if you're hunting something super, super, super easy, trivial, not problem at all, go for the crit damage. If you're going for anything remotely difficult, you go for the magic level as extra healing for your spells. Very, very good. Very powerful perk. And obviously in the 7, we have the critical hit chance. Moving on, we have the Soulkamas. So very similar. You've got fist fighting plus extra crit damage in the 1, 2, 3. Pretty basic. You have this 3% damage against Inkborn. So if you're hunting library, this is better. So yeah, this one is basically a library perk. If you're hunting library, you should go for that one. Here in the middle one, similar situation again to the base damage versus crit damage. I didn't run the numbers as closely for this one. I do think that the base damage is the default one and is better, but at a certain level, the crit damage will overtake. I think it may be a little bit lower level than the sweep and takedown, just because the sweep and takedown scales with harmony and is just very, very good base damage. But in here, yeah, it's going to be base damage definitely on lower level, but I think by like level 1000, 1500, you may want to have to look into whether crit damage may be better at that point than base damage, but it's going to be high level anyways. Then in here, in option 5, we go for +1 attack. It's very close to this 7.5% as of your fist fighting, but the damage is very close between the two. But the +1 attack is better for bossing and it gives you more leech. So overall, it's just the default safer choice. Just go for the +1 attack and don't worry about it. In the option 6, the extra critical extra damage is generally speaking, better almost everywhere. That's also going to give you more leech through the crits. But if you're doing, for example, low-level bestiaries, right? I don't know, it's rapid respawn, you go do some low-level bestiaries. Obviously, the mana on kill will be better, so it is situational. But for like regular hunting, high-end hunting, I think the extra crit damage is definitely better. And in the Proficiency 7, obviously, we'll go for that 1% critical hit chance. So those were the two biggest trees. Now we're going to look at some of the sort of smaller ones, I guess. So first of all, we've got Falcon Sai. Pretty obvious, everything in green. Not much to talk about here, not much situational. So just use this. I would not make any changes here. Basically ever. I guess theoretically you could consider this for a bit more healing. But I don't think so. I don't think so. I think Falcon Sai is basically a solved weapon proficiency, so I would just go with those. Moving on, we have Inferniarch Claws. I'm only covering Rending. Inferniarch Claws is basically the same situation for all of them. So yeah, you've got your crit damage, crit chance, obviously. You've got your damage for auto attacks. Fist fighting as extra damage is much, much better numerically than the crit stuff. Then in Proficiency 4, you can choose either Life Leech or Mana Leech. So I think Mana Leech is probably better. I would probably go for the Mana Leech one, but, that is kind of whatever you prefer. Then in 5, we have +1 fist fighting. None of those are really all that the planned. I don't really know where you'd use that. So I don't think that's very good. The 2.5% crit chance for auto attacks is okay, but it's not as good as the fist fighting. In here, in Proficiency 6, obviously you're going to go for this one default. But if you're bossing, then you go for the bossing damage. But by the default, you go for the fist fighting. And then obviously crit chance for greater flurry of blows in the Proficiency 7 as well. Moving on, Lion Claws. Another one of like pretty basic ones. This is just a setup that I recommend. Not much to argue here. I think this is pretty obviously this one. Unless you're doing like maybe some bestiary on like were creatures, then maybe you can go for that one. But this is like a level 270 weapon, so it's kind of irrelevant anyways. But yeah, this is basically a very, very basic treat as well. Moving on, we've got the Moon Spade, which again is another very, very basic tree. Like there's not even any choices in anything but number 4. In number 4, you've got base Mana Leech, which is the default option, or you have the 3% damage against magical. And this one can be okay. Like if you're actually doing some magical, I don't know what you would be hunting with. Magical that's got the Moon Spade, but I think maybe there will be some creatures added down the line, and I think there is a few that you would hunt. So check if the monsters are in magical, and if you're actually hunting magical, then yes, this one would obviously be much better than 2% Mana Leech. In the Cobra Bo, again, another tree which doesn't really have all that much real choice. This is pretty basic what you're going to go for. Honestly, not much to talk about here. Flurry of Blows, not a very good ability anyway, so those are basically non-considerations. And then you have 4% damage against mammals. I don't know what you'd do there, so that's basically a non-issue. It's all obvious for Cobra Bo. And finally, the last item we will cover is the Naga Katar, which honestly also doesn't have all that much choice. So in the Proficiency 4, magic level is not better. You'd much rather have +1 attack. Like that is not a consideration. You do not get the magic level. Very, very bad. It's just for healing, whereas the 1 attack is going to give you... The +1 attack is probably going to give you more healing through leeching than the +1 magic level would. Then you've got the 3% damage against reptiles, which is so silly because reptiles are mostly like earth-based creatures and are strong to earth. Obviously, Naga Katar is earth, so I don't even know why this is here. So again, not an option. And then in the middle, like number 2 is the only one you can choose, right? You have +30 hit points on kill or +15 mana on kill. Personally, I would probably go for mana on kill. I think it's probably better, but that one is kind of situational and up to you. But yeah, my recommendation is mana on kill. And this is it. Those are all the weapons I wanted to cover. So clearly, Sanguine Claws and Soulkamas are the only 2 trees where you really kind of had to think about and decide what's better. But for everything else, it's basically pretty obvious what you should be going for. So I'm not super thrilled overall with the Weapon Mastery Proficiency update. It's okay. It's a little bit of nice power. some choice here and there, but generally not super complex. Anyway, that's all I have for you today, guys. I hope I covered all the weapons. If we have any new top-end weapons added down the line in future updates, make sure to check out my stream. You can ask me. I'll be happy to let you know what's best. But for now, this is all I have. If you disagree with anything or you need any further clarifications, let me know in the comments. I'll be happy to answer. And yeah, thank you very much for watching, and see you in the next one. Bye-bye.